A husband abandoned his wife and 5-year-old twins in a condemned house with no food, no phone, no way out. But what they did in that house changed an entire city. This story will break you and rebuild you. Before I tell you this true story from Detroit where abandonment became transformation, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And if you believe that our worst moments can become our greatest triumphs, subscribe and hit that notification bell, because what this mother and her children built from nothing, in a house with holes in the roof and drug needles outside, will restore your faith in humanity. The rain hammered against the broken windows of the abandoned house on Maple Street in Detroit, Michigan. Inside, Sarah Mitchell, 29 years old, sat on the dusty floor with her 5-year-old twins, Emma and Ethan, trying to keep them calm. "Mommy, where did Daddy go?" Emma asked for the 10th time, her small voice echoing in the empty room. "He'll be back soon, sweetheart," Sarah lied, pulling both children closer. But she knew the truth. David wasn't coming back. It had been 4 hours since her husband had driven them to this abandoned house on the outskirts of Detroit and walked away. 4 hours since he'd looked her in the eyes and said, "I can't do this anymore. I'm done." Sarah and David had been married for 7 years. They'd met in college, fallen in love quickly, married young. The twins had come 2 years later, a surprise, but a welcome one. Or so Sarah had thought. The truth was, David had never really adjusted to fatherhood. The responsibility, the financial pressure, the loss of freedom, it had eaten away at him year by year. For the past 6 months, things had gotten worse. David had lost his job as a sales manager. His drinking had increased. He'd become distant, angry, unpredictable. But Sarah had kept hoping he'd turn around. That the man she married was still in there somewhere. She'd been wrong. 3 days ago, David had come home drunk and furious. "I can't take this anymore. The kids crying, you nagging, the bills piling up. I feel like I'm drowning." "We'll figure it out together," Sarah had said. "That's what marriage is." "I don't want to figure it out. I want out." Sarah had tried to calm him, but David had made up his mind. And this morning, he'd executed his plan. "Pack bags for you and the kids. 1 bag each. We're going somewhere," he'd told her. "Where? Just trust me. It'll be better." Sarah, desperate to believe he was finally trying to help, had obeyed. She'd packed bags for herself and the twins, thinking maybe David had found a shelter, or a friend who could help them. Instead, he'd driven them to this abandoned house in the worst part of Detroit. The house had been condemned years ago. Graffiti covered the walls. Windows were broken. The electricity had been cut off long ago. There was no running water. Squatters had clearly used it before. There were old mattresses, empty bottles, drug paraphernalia. "This is where you'll stay," David had said, unloading their 3 bags. "David, what are you talking about? We can't stay here. This place is dangerous." "You'll figure it out. You're smart. You always say we'll figure it out. So figure it out." "David, please. The children. The children are why I'm drowning. Don't you get it? I look at them and all I see is my life ending. My freedom gone. Everything I wanted to do. Impossible now because I have to take care of 3 people who need all the time. They're your children. I didn't ask for twins. I didn't ask for any of this." David had screamed, and the twins had started crying. Sarah had grabbed his arm. "Please. If you're leaving me, fine. But don't leave us here. Take us to my sister's house at least. Or to a shelter. Somewhere safe. Your sister lives 4 hours away and I'm not wasting the gas. And shelters ask questions. This way, you're on your own. Figure it out yourself. You're abandoning your own children. I'm freeing myself from a life I never wanted. David had gotten back in the car, their only car, which was in his name. David! Sarah had screamed. You can't do this. This is child endangerment. It's illegal. Call the cops then. Oh wait, you don't have a phone. I took yours, remember? He had. That morning, David had taken both their phones, saying he needed to sell them for cash. Sarah had believed him. Now she understood. He'd been cutting off her ability to call for help. Daddy! Daddy, don't go. Ethan had run toward the car, but David had already driven off. Sarah had watched the taillights disappear, standing in the rain with a crying 5-year-old clinging to her leg and another running back to her, sobbing. And that's how they'd ended up here. Abandoned. Alone. With night approaching. Sarah forced herself to assess the situation practically. Panic wouldn't help. What did they have? 3 bags of clothes, some snacks she'd packed for what she thought would be a car trip, granola bars, juice boxes, crackers. No phone, no money. David had controlled their finances. No transportation, no way to contact anyone. Where were they? An abandoned house in a rough neighborhood at least 3 miles from the nearest business district, surrounded by other abandoned houses and vacant lots. What were the dangers? No heat, it was October in Michigan, cold at night. No secure doors or windows, anyone could walk in. Drug activity in the area, she'd seen needles outside. Lack of food and water, 2 5-year-olds who depended entirely on her. Sarah felt terror rising but pushed it down. Not now. Fall apart later. Right now, survive. Okay, babies, she said to the twins, forcing a smile. We're going to camp here tonight. Like an adventure. I don't like this adventure, Emma said, her lip trembling. I want to go home. I know, sweetie. Tomorrow, Mommy will figure out how to get us somewhere better. But tonight, we're going to be brave together, okay? Both children nodded, though Ethan was still crying. Sarah found the least dirty corner of the house and spread out a blanket from one of the bags. She gave each child a granola bar and a juice box. We need to save our food, she told them. So just a little bit now, okay? As darkness fell, the temperature dropped. Sarah wrapped both children in all the clothes from the bags, layering them up. Then she held them close, using her own body heat to keep them warm. Tell us a story, Mommy, Emma whispered. Sarah's voice shook, but she began. Once upon a time, there was a brave princess who had to protect her 2 little dragons. As she told the story, making it up as she went along, Sarah's mind raced. Tomorrow, she'd walk to find help. She'd find a phone, call her sister, call the police, something. Tonight, she just had to keep her babies alive. Outside, she heard voices, people walking past, laughing. Then later, shouting. A bottle breaking. Sarah held her children tighter and prayed for morning. Mommy, Ethan whispered. I'm scared. Me too, baby, Sarah admitted. But we're together. And as long as we're together, we'll be okay. She didn't know if it was true. But she said it anyway. Because sometimes, hope is the only thing you have left. What Sarah didn't know yet was that this abandoned house would become more than just a place where she was abandoned. It would become a place where she discovered her own strength, where two 5-year-olds learned resilience beyond their years, and where the community would discover them and rally in ways Sarah never imagined. But first, they had to survive the night, and the next day, and the next, because David wasn't coming back, and the life Sarah had known was gone forever. Now, in this abandoned house, a new life would have to begin, built from nothing but a mother's love and a will to survive. Sarah barely slept that first night. Every sound made her jump. Footsteps outside, voices, the creaking of the old house settling. She kept the twins pressed against her, her body forming a protective shield. When dawn finally came through the broken windows, Sarah assessed their situation in the pale morning light. The food she'd packed wouldn't last more than 2 days. The juice boxes were nearly gone, and they had no water source except what might be in a rusty tap she'd spotted in what used to be the kitchen. "Okay," Sarah whispered to herself. "Priority 1, water. Priority 2, contact someone for help." But she couldn't leave the twins alone in this house. And she couldn't take them with her to wander the dangerous neighborhood looking for help. They were trapped. Emma woke up first. "Mommy, I'm hungry." "I know, baby. Here." Sarah gave her half a granola bar, saving the rest for later. "Where's Daddy?" The question stabbed Sarah's heart. Daddy had to go away. Is he coming back?" Sarah couldn't lie anymore. "No, sweetheart. He's not." Emma's face crumpled. "Why?" Because Daddy was very sad and confused, and he made a bad choice. But it's not your fault, okay? You and Ethan are perfect. This is about Daddy, not about you. Did we do something wrong? No, baby. No. Adults make mistakes sometimes. Big mistakes. And this is Daddy's mistake, not yours. As the morning progressed, Sarah explored the house more thoroughly, searching for anything useful. In what used to be the basement, she found old plastic bottles, which she could use to collect water, a camping lantern that somehow still worked, miracle. Some old newspapers, could be used for warmth or fire starting, a rusty but functional can opener. In the backyard, overgrown and wild, she discovered an old vegetable garden that had gone wild. Some tomatoes were still growing, surprisingly. Dandelion greens, edible if cleaned, a rain barrel that collected water. It would need to be boiled, but it was water. We might be able to survive here for a few days, Sarah realized. But then what? That afternoon, as the twins played with sticks in the backyard, Sarah kept them close and constantly watched. Something unexpected happened. A voice called from the fence. "Hey, you folks living there." Sarah's heart raced. She turned to see an elderly woman, probably in her 70s, looking over the fence with curiosity, not hostility. We're just passing through," Sarah said carefully, unsure who to trust. "Passing through. With 2 little ones. In that condemned house." The woman looked skeptical. "I'm Dorothy Washington. Lived next door for 40 years. This neighborhood went downhill, but I stayed. That house has been empty for 6 years." Sarah made a split-second decision. Trust. "My husband abandoned us here yesterday. I have no phone, no money, no car. I'm trying to figure out what to do next." Dorothy's face softened immediately. "Lord have mercy. Come here, child." Within an hour, Dorothy had brought them. Sandwiches and fruit bottles of water blankets, a prepaid cell phone. It's old, but it works. Why are you helping us? Sarah asked, tears streaming down her face. Because I was you once, Dorothy said quietly. 45 years ago, my husband left me with 3 babies and nothing. People helped me then. I help now. It's what we do. With the phone, Sarah immediately called her sister, Rachel, who lived in Ohio. Sarah, I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. David texted me from your phone saying you'd left him and taken the kids. I've been so worried. He what? Sarah felt rage and relief mixing. Rachel, he abandoned us. He left us in an abandoned house in Detroit with no phone, no money, nothing. That bastard. Okay, listen. I'm coming to get you. I'm leaving right now. I'll be there in 4 hours. Where exactly are you? Sarah gave her the address Dorothy provided. 4 hours, Rachel said. Hold on for 4 hours. I'm coming. But 4 hours was a long time when you're in an abandoned house in a dangerous neighborhood. As afternoon turned to evening, Sarah noticed something interesting. The abandoned house was being watched. Not by predators. By neighbors. Dorothy had apparently spread the word, and now there was a rotation of people keeping an eye on the house. Mr. Johnson from 2 streets over walked past every 30 minutes. Mrs. Chen brought soup. A younger man named Marcus stood casually across the street, clearly standing guard. The neighborhood takes care of its own, Dorothy explained. We might not have much, but we have each other. Sarah was overwhelmed by the kindness of strangers while her own husband had shown such cruelty. While they waited for Rachel, Sarah did something unexpected. She started cleaning the house. Mommy, why are we cleaning if we're leaving? Emma asked. Because someone else might need this place someday, Sarah explained. And I want to leave it better than we found it. With garbage bags Dorothy provided, Sarah and the twins, who thought it was a game, cleared trash from the main room. They swept with an old broom Dorothy lent them. They wiped down surfaces. What are you doing? Marcus asked, watching from the doorway. Making it better, Sarah said simply. Lady, you were abandoned here yesterday, and you're cleaning? I can't control what my husband did, but I can control what I do. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, then smiled. You're something else. Hold on. He left and returned with tools. That front door doesn't lock. Let me fix it. And I'll patch that broken window, just in case someone else needs this place to be safe someday. As they worked, the twins playing nearby, Dorothy sitting on a salvaged chair supervising, something remarkable happened. The abandoned house began to transform. Not into a palace, but into something cleaner, safer, more dignified. Why are you all helping us? Sarah asked. You don't know us. Because you reminded us, Dorothy said. You reminded us that this house, this neighborhood, still matters. That we can still take care of each other. That we're not abandoned, even if the city abandoned us. Marcus nodded. This neighborhood has been dying for years. People leave. Houses rot. We forget what community means. But watching you, this mom who got dumped with 2 babies, watching you not give up, not wallow, but clean and improve even when you're leaving, it reminded me why I stayed. Mrs. Chin added, You're not just passing through. You're leaving something behind. Hope. When Rachel's car pulled up 4 hours later, Sarah expected to just grab the twins and leave. Instead, she found a small crowd had gathered: Dorothy, Marcus, Mrs. Chen, Mr. Johnson, and several others. "You're leaving already?" Dorothy said, though she was smiling. "My sister came to get us," Sarah explained. "But thank you. All of you. You saved us. You didn't have to, but you did." "Where will you go?" Marcus asked. "With me to Ohio," Rachel said, hugging Sarah tightly. "She'll stay as long as she needs. The kids will be safe." "Good," Dorothy said. She handed Sarah an envelope. "This is from the neighborhood. It's not much, about $200 we collected. For food, for gas, for whatever you need." "I can't take." "You can and you will. Consider it an investment in hope." As Sarah loaded the twins and their bags into Rachel's car, Emma suddenly pulled away and ran back to Dorothy. "Thank you for the sandwiches," Emma said solemnly. "You're very nice." Dorothy knelt down, her old knees creaking. "You're very welcome, sweetheart. You be good for your mama, okay? She's very special." "I know," Emma said. "She's the bravest person in the world." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she buckled the twins into Rachel's car. Before they drove away, she looked back at the house, the abandoned house where her husband had left her and their children to die or disappear. But instead of dying, they'd survived. Instead of disappearing, they'd been seen. And instead of just being abandoned, they'd found community in the most unexpected place. "Goodbye," Sarah whispered to the house and the people surrounding it. "Not goodbye," Dorothy called back. "You'll visit. And you'll remember. You're stronger than you know." As Rachel drove them toward Ohio and safety, Sarah held her sleeping twins and thought about the past 24 hours. David had meant to break her, to make her disappear, to solve his problem by abandoning it. Instead, he'd inadvertently shown her that she was capable of surviving anything, that her children were resilient beyond measure, that strangers could show more love than family, that abandoned places could become communities, that even in the darkest moment, hope could take root. "What are you thinking about?" Rachel asked. "That David thought he was destroying us," Sarah said quietly. "But actually, he freed us from him. From the illusion of who he was. And he showed me who I really am." "Who's that?" "A survivor. A mother. Someone stronger than I ever knew." The twins slept peacefully as the car carried them toward a new life. Behind them in Detroit, the abandoned house stood a little cleaner, a little safer, a little more dignified than before. And in that house, on the wall, Marcus had written in chalk, "Sarah and her twins were here. They survived. So can you." Because sometimes, abandoned places become symbols of hope. And sometimes, being abandoned becomes the beginning of finding yourself. Sarah sat in Rachel's guest room, twins finally asleep after days of nightmares and clingy behavior. The trauma of abandonment was showing itself in small ways: Emma refusing to let Sarah out of her sight, Ethan wetting the bed for the first time in 2 years. "They'll need therapy," Rachel said gently, sitting beside her sister. "And honestly, so will you." "I can't afford therapy. I can't afford anything. Rachel, I have nothing. No job, no car, no money, no home. David took everything. Then we take it back. Legally." Rachel had already contacted a lawyer, a friend who agreed to work pro bono given the circumstances. The legal situation was complex but clear. David had committed child abandonment and endangerment, felonies in Michigan. He'd also left without paying child support, stolen community property, the car, the phones, and essentially kidnapped his own children to an abandoned location. "We're filing police reports," the lawyer, Jennifer Martinez, explained over video call. "And we're filing for emergency custody, child support, and potentially criminal charges." "But I don't know where David is," Sarah said. "The police will find him. He used your phone to send messages. He used credit cards. He'll leave a trail. What if he comes back? What if he tries to take the twins? He won't. Men like David are cowards. He ran because he couldn't handle responsibility. He's not coming back to fight for custody, he's running from consequence." Jennifer was right. 2 weeks later, David was found in Florida, living with a woman he'd met online 2 months before abandoning his family. Apparently, he'd been planning his escape for weeks, selling items, draining accounts, setting up a new life. The police arrested him at his new girlfriend's apartment. The charges: child endangerment, child abandonment, and theft. When confronted, David's defense was pathetic. "I was overwhelmed. I had a mental breakdown. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." "You left your wife and 5-year-old twins in a condemned house with no food, no phone, and no way to get help," Detective Morrison said, reading from the report. "In what universe is that not intentional harm? I thought Sarah would figure it out. She's smart, she always figures things out." "So your plan was to abandon your family and hope your wife's intelligence would keep your children from dying of exposure or getting hurt by drug addicts who frequent that area?" David had no good answer. His girlfriend, upon learning what he'd done, kicked him out immediately. "I thought you were divorced," she told police. "He said his ex-wife had custody and he was starting over. I didn't know he'd abandoned his kids. Get him out of my house." The story hit local news in Detroit first. Father abandons family in condemned house. Community rallies to help. Then it went regional. Then national. The images were powerful. The abandoned house, now cleaned up by Marcus and Dorothy. Photos of Sarah and the twins, faces blurred for privacy, being helped by neighbors. Video of Dorothy explaining, "We take care of our own." Public reaction was swift and overwhelming. Outrage at David's actions, admiration for Sarah's strength, love for the Detroit neighbors who helped, donations pouring in. People wanted to help Sarah rebuild. A GoFundMe created by Dorothy, with Sarah's permission, raised $75,000 in 3 days. "I don't understand," Sarah told Rachel, watching the donations climb. "Why do strangers care so much?" "Because your story resonates. Every mother sees herself in you, doing whatever it takes to protect her kids. Every person who's been abandoned sees themselves. And everyone who wants to believe in community sees Dorothy and Marcus." 1 month later, David's trial was fast-tracked given the evidence and media attention. His public defender advised him to take a plea deal: 2 years in prison, 5 years probation, permanent loss of custody, and child support obligations. "You're lucky you're not getting 10 years, the defender told him. "The prosecutor wanted to make an example of you." At the sentencing hearing, Sarah was allowed to give a victim impact statement. She stood before the court, David sitting at the defendant's table, refusing to look at her, and spoke. "Your Honor, David Mitchell didn't just abandon 3 people. He tried to erase us. He took us to the most dangerous place he could think of and left us there hoping we'd, what? Disappear. Die. Become someone else's problem? My 5-year-old twins have nightmares now. They don't understand why their daddy hated them enough to throw them away. Emma asks me every day if I'm going to leave too. Ethan barely speaks anymore. But here's what David doesn't understand. He didn't destroy us. He revealed himself. And he freed us from living with a man who saw his own children as burdens. I don't forgive him. I won't. But I don't need to. Because we're going to be okay. Not because of him, but in spite of him. She sat down. David still wouldn't look at her. The judge's words were scathing. Mr. Mitchell, I've seen many cases of child neglect and abandonment in my career. But the calculated cruelty of your actions, planning for weeks, taking phones, stranding them miles from help, is particularly disturbing. You didn't snap in a moment of crisis. You systematically destroyed your family's safety net to escape responsibility. I'm sentencing you to 3 years in prison, followed by 10 years of supervised probation. You will pay child support calculated at 35% of any income you earn, plus arrears. You will have no contact with your children unless they, as adults, choose to contact you. And you will register as a child abuser, which will follow you for the rest of your life. I hope you use your time in prison to understand what you did. But I doubt you will. David was led away in handcuffs. Sarah felt nothing. No satisfaction, no closure. Just exhaustion. 3 months later. With the GoFundMe money and pro bono legal help, Sarah was rebuilding. She'd enrolled in an online certification program for medical billing. She could work from home while the twins were young. The twins were in therapy, slowly processing their trauma. Rachel had helped her buy a used car. She'd rented a small apartment, nothing fancy, but safe and warm. But something unexpected was also happening. Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Detroit. About Dorothy, Marcus, Mrs. Chen, and the neighborhood that had saved them. I want to do something, Sarah told Rachel one evening. For them. They gave me hope when I had nothing. I want to give back. How? Sarah had been researching. The GoFundMe had raised more money than she needed for immediate expenses. She had about $30,000 left after securing housing, transportation, and education. I want to create a fund. 4 abandoned houses in Detroit. To fix them up as emergency shelters for families in crisis. Dorothy said, I left hope behind. I want to leave something more tangible. Rachel smiled. You're amazing, you know that? No. I'm just someone who was helped and wants to help back. 6 months later. Sarah's Hope House opened in Detroit, the very same abandoned house where Sarah had been left. Marcus and a group of volunteers had fully renovated it with the fund Sarah established. It now had working electricity and plumbing, secure doors and windows, beds and basic furniture, a stocked kitchen, information about resources for families in crisis. Dorothy served as the volunteer coordinator. This house almost saw a tragedy, she told reporters at the opening. Instead, it became a symbol that abandoned places and abandoned people can be restored. The Hope House wasn't a permanent shelter, it was an emergency stop. A safe place for families who suddenly found themselves with nowhere to go. A bridge between crisis and stability. On the opening day, Sarah returned to Detroit with the twins. Emma and Ethan, now 6 years old, didn't fully understand the significance, but they knew. This is where the nice people helped us. Do you remember being here? A reporter asked the twins gently. A little, Emma said. It was scary. But the grandma gave us sandwiches. Dorothy, standing nearby, wiped tears from her eyes. That evening, after the ceremony and the reporters left, Sarah stood in the house alone for a moment. She thought about the terrified woman who'd huddled in this corner 6 months ago, wondering if her babies would survive the night. She thought about the husband who'd abandoned them here, thinking he was escaping responsibility. And she thought about what had actually happened, not an ending, but a beginning. Thank you, Sarah whispered to the house. You protected us when no one else would. And now you'll protect others. As she locked up to leave, Sarah saw Marcus had added something to the wall, a permanent plaque. Sarah's Hope House. In October 2023, a mother and her twins were abandoned here. They survived through community, courage, and love. This house is now a sanctuary for others in need. Because abandoned places, and people, deserve second chances. Sarah drove back to Ohio that night, twins sleeping in the back seat, feeling something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not because the pain was gone, it wasn't. Not because everything was fixed, it wasn't. But because she'd taken the worst thing that ever happened to her and transformed it into something that would help others. David had tried to make her disappear. Instead, she'd become unforgettable. And that was the best revenge of all. Sarah's Hope House had helped 18 families in its first year. Single mothers fleeing abuse, families suddenly evicted, people escaping domestic violence. Each stayed an average of 5 days while social workers connected them with longer-term resources. Dorothy, now 72, had found new purpose as the house coordinator. I spent 40 years watching this neighborhood die, she told visitors. Now I'm watching it come back to life. The Hope House had sparked something unexpected, a community renewal movement. Marcus had started a youth program, teaching abandoned house renovation to teenagers. These kids need purpose, he explained. And these houses need love. Perfect match. Mrs. Chen opened a community kitchen in a renovated building nearby, serving free meals 3 times a week. Mr. Johnson started a neighborhood watch that actually worked, not to police, but to protect and connect. It's like Sarah flipped a switch, Dorothy observed. She reminded us we matter, that we can still build something beautiful from ruins. Meanwhile, in Ohio, Sarah was thriving in her own way. She'd completed her medical billing certification and landed a work-from-home job with decent pay and benefits. The twins were in first grade now, doing better, still in therapy, but the nightmares were less frequent. Mommy, do you ever think about Daddy? Emma asked one evening during dinner. Sarah had been dreading this question. Sometimes. Do you? A little. I remember he was fun sometimes. But then he left us in that scary house. That's right. He did. And that was very wrong of him. Is he in jail? Sarah had told them age-appropriate versions of the truth. Yes. Because what he did was against the law. Daddies are supposed to protect their children, not leave them in dangerous places. Will we see him again? Not until you're grown up and can decide for yourself. He's not allowed to see you now. Ethan, who spoke less than his sister, suddenly said, Good. I don't want to see him. That's okay, buddy. You don't have to. But I want to see Miss Dorothy again. And Marcus. Can we visit the Hope House? Sarah smiled. Yes. We can visit. 18 months after the abandonment, Sarah received an unexpected letter forwarded through her lawyer. It was from David. She almost threw it away without reading it. But curiosity won. Dear Sarah, I know I have no right to write to you. I know you probably hate me. You should. Prison gives you a lot of time to think. I've been doing therapy here, mandatory, but I'm actually trying. I'm starting to understand what I did, really understand it, not just the legal consequences. I abandoned my family because I was a coward. I saw my life slipping away. My freedom, my dreams, my identity. And I blamed you and the kids instead of accepting that life changes and we have to change with it. I convinced myself you were all suffocating me. But the truth is, I was drowning in my own selfishness and I took you down with me. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm writing because my therapist says I need to acknowledge what I did without excuses. I tried to erase my family. I left you in a place where you could have died. I traumatized my own children. And I did it all to chase some fantasy of freedom that didn't even exist. I hope you're okay. I hope the twins are okay. I hope you've built a life that's better without me in it. I'm sorry we'll never be enough. But I'm sorry anyway. David. Sarah read it twice. Then she showed it to her therapist. How do you feel? Dr. Rivera asked. Nothing. Is that weird? I thought I'd be angry or sad or something. But I just feel nothing. That's not weird. It's growth. You've processed the trauma and moved past it. David is no longer central to your emotional life. He was my husband, father of my children. How can I feel nothing? Because he's not that person anymore to you. He's just the man who hurt you. And you've healed enough that his apology doesn't matter. You don't need it. Sarah thought about that. Should I respond? Do you want to? No. I don't think I do. I've moved on. Responding pulls me back. Then don't. You don't owe him closure. You only owe yourself peace. Sarah never responded to the letter. She filed it away with other legal documents and moved forward. 2 years after the abandonment, Sarah's Hope House had expanded. With additional fundraising and grants, they'd renovated 3 more abandoned houses in Detroit. Hope House 2, focused on single mothers with children. Hope House 3, for elderly people suddenly displaced. Hope House 4, for teenagers aging out of foster care. The model was catching on. Other cities were reaching out. How did you do this? Can we replicate it? Sarah, who'd never intended to become an activist or non-profit founder, found herself speaking at conferences, sharing her story, training others. I'm not special, she told audiences. I was just a mom trying to survive. The special part is what happened next. The community that formed, the neighbors who helped, the transformation of abandoned spaces into hope. A documentary crew contacted her. We want to tell your story. Sarah was hesitant. It's not about me. It's about the community. About Dorothy and Marcus and what they built. That's exactly the story we want to tell. The documentary, Abandoned, How One Detroit Neighborhood Found Hope, premiered at a film festival and was picked up by a streaming service. It followed Sarah's journey but focused heavily on Detroit, on the neighbors who'd helped, the houses they'd renovated, the families they'd saved. Dorothy became a minor celebrity. Can you believe it? She laughed. 73 years old, and I'm on TV. Marcus used the attention to launch a non-profit construction training program for at-risk youth. The mayor of Detroit cited the Hope Houses as an example of grassroots community renewal. And Sarah. She watched it all with quiet satisfaction, knowing she'd taken the worst moment of her life and alchemied it into something beautiful. 3 years after the abandonment. The twins were 8 now. Happy, adjusted, thriving. They barely remembered David. He was a vague figure from their early childhood, not a daily presence. Do you think they'll want to know him when they're older? Rachel asked. Maybe, Sarah said. And if they do, I won't stop them. But they'll be old enough to make informed decisions. To understand what he did and decide for themselves what relationship, if any, they want. You're remarkably well-adjusted about this. Therapy helps. Time helps. And honestly, building the Hope Houses helped most. Turning my pain into purpose. Speaking of which, I heard you got a call from the governor's office? Sarah smiled. They want to create a state program based on the Hope House model. Emergency family shelters in renovated abandoned properties. They're calling it the Second Chances Initiative. That's amazing. Are you going to be involved? As a consultant. I'm not leaving my day job. I need stability for the twins. But I'll help however I can. That night, Sarah tucked the twins into bed, a ritual they still needed despite being 8. Mommy, teacher said we're doing family trees at school, Emma said. Do we put Daddy on ours? It was a complicated question. What do you want to do? Emma thought about it. I guess we have to. He's technically our dad. But can we also put Miss Dorothy and Marcus? They're kind of like family too. I think that's a perfect idea. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up for you. Then they're definitely family, Ethan agreed. After the twins fell asleep, Sarah sat in her living room, modest but cozy, and reflected on the past 3 years. David had meant to destroy them. Had left them in an abandoned house expecting them to disappear, to become someone else's problem or worse. Instead, that house became a Hope House that had helped over 50 families. The neighborhood rallied and started rebuilding. Sarah found strength she never knew she had. The twins learned resilience and the meaning of real family. A whole network of emergency shelters was being created. Lives were being changed. Thank you, Sarah whispered into the quiet apartment. Not to David, but to the universe, to Dorothy, to the abandoned house that had protected them, to her own strength that had carried them through. Because sometimes being abandoned is the beginning of finding out who you really are. And what you find might be stronger than you ever imagined. Emma and Ethan were 10 years old now, in 5th grade, thriving. Sarah had been promoted at her job and they'd moved to a small house. Nothing fancy, but theirs. Stability had become their new normal. Then the letter came. Not from David this time, but from his parole officer. Ms. Mitchell, David Mitchell has completed his prison sentence and is eligible for supervised visitation with his children, pending your approval and a court-ordered psychological evaluation. He has requested to begin the process of reconnecting with Emma and Ethan. Sarah's hands shook as she read it. She immediately called Jennifer, her lawyer. You don't have to agree to this, Jennifer said. You have full custody. He has no rights. I know. But the twins are old enough to have opinions now. I need to ask them. That evening, Sarah sat both twins down for a serious conversation. Your father has finished his time in prison. He wants to see you. But you get to decide. This is your choice, not mine. What do you think we should do? Emma asked. I think you should do what feels right for you. If you want to see him, I'll arrange it with lots of safety measures. If you don't want to see him, that's completely valid too. Ethan spoke first. I don't remember him much. He's like a story person. Not real. He's real, Sarah said gently. But I understand what you mean. He hasn't been part of your life. Why does he want to see us now? Emma asked. I don't know. Maybe he's changed. Maybe he feels guilty. Maybe he wants to try to be a father. I honestly don't know. The twins looked at each other in that way twins do, communicating without words. Can we think about it? Emma asked. Of course. Take all the time you need. 3 weeks later, after many discussions with their therapist, the twins reached a decision. We want to see him once, Emma said. To hear what he has to say. But not alone. You have to be there, Mom. Are you sure? Both twins nodded. Okay. I'll arrange it. The meeting. The supervised visitation took place at a family counseling center. A therapist was present. Sarah sat beside the twins. David entered looking older, thinner, more worn than Sarah remembered. He stopped when he saw them, his eyes filling with tears. Emma. Ethan. You're so big. The twins stared at him, uncertain. Can I sit down? David asked. The therapist nodded. David sat across from them, hands shaking. I don't know where to start. Why did you leave us? Ethan asked bluntly. At 10, he developed a directness that surprised adults. David took a breath. Because I was scared. And selfish. And I made the worst decision of my life. You left us in a scary house, Emma said, her voice accusing. We could have died. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix it, Ethan said. You're right. It doesn't. Nothing can fix what I did. But I want you to know, it wasn't your fault. It was never your fault. You were perfect. I was broken. Are you fixed now? Emma asked. David considered the question carefully. I'm better. I've been in therapy for 5 years. I understand what I did and why it was so wrong. But am I completely fixed? I don't know. Probably not. But I'm trying. Why should we care? Ethan asked. You didn't care about us. The words hit David like a physical blow. You're right. I didn't. I was so focused on myself and what I'd lost that I couldn't see what I had. I threw away the most important things in my life. What do you want from us? Emma asked. Nothing. Honestly, nothing. I don't deserve anything from you. I just wanted to see you. To tell you I'm sorry. And to tell you that if you never want to see me again, I understand. The twins looked at each other again. We're going to need time to think about this, Emma said, sounding far older than 10. That's fair, David said. After David left, the therapist talked with Sarah and the twins. How do you feel? She asked them. Confused, Emma said. He seems sorry. But he left us. How do we trust him? You don't have to trust him, the therapist said. Trust is earned over time. And he hasn't earned it yet. Will we see him again? Ethan asked. Only if you want to. This is your choice. 6 months later. After careful consideration and continued therapy, the twins decided to have occasional supervised visits with David, once a month, always with Sarah present. The visits were awkward. David tried too hard. The twins were guardedly polite. But slowly, something emerged, not a father-child relationship, but something more like distant relatives getting to know each other. He's like a stranger, Emma told Sarah after the 4th visit. But a stranger who's trying. Is that enough for you? Sarah asked. For now. I don't think he'll ever be dad like dads in movies. But maybe he can be someone we know. Someone who made a huge mistake but is trying to be better. That's very mature of you. I learned from you, Mom. You always say people can change if they do the work. Sarah hugged her daughter, amazed by her wisdom. 7 years after the abandonment, Sarah received an invitation, Dorothy Washington's 80th birthday party, to be held at the original Hope House in Detroit. Sarah drove the twins, now 12 years old, back to Detroit for the celebration. As they pulled up to the neighborhood, the twins gasped. Mom, it's so different. The abandoned, dangerous street they'd known 7 years ago had been transformed. Houses were renovated. Community gardens bloomed. Children played in a new park. This is what happens when a community decides to rebuild, Sarah explained. At the party, Dorothy held court like a queen, surrounded by dozens of people whose lives she'd touched. Sarah! Dorothy called out, embracing her. And look at these beautiful children. So grown. Do you remember us? Emma asked. Remember you? Child, I'll never forget you. You 3 changed my life. Changed this whole neighborhood. We did. Ethan said, surprised. Yes. You reminded us we mattered. That we could still make a difference. Marcus approached, now running a successful construction company that employed 15 formerly homeless people. Sarah, the Hope House model has been adopted in 12 cities now. That's 12 cities with emergency family shelters because of what you started. I didn't start it. You all did. I was just trying to survive. You did more than survive, Marcus said. You transformed suffering into service. That's rare. Later, during the party, a young woman approached Sarah. She was maybe 25, holding a toddler. Ms. Mitchell? I'm Jasmine. You don't know me, but 3 years ago, I was fleeing an abusive relationship with my daughter. We had nowhere to go. The Hope House took us in. They helped me get to a safe shelter, then into transitional housing. Now I have my own apartment and a job. I just wanted to say thank you. You don't need to thank me, Sarah said, tears forming. I'm just glad the house was there when you needed it. It saved our lives. Just like it saved yours. As Jasmine walked away, Sarah turned to the twins. That's why we went through what we went through. So places like this could exist for people like her. Do you ever wish it didn't happen? Emma asked. That Dad hadn't left us? Sarah thought carefully. I wish you hadn't been traumatized. I wish you hadn't been scared. But do I wish we'd stayed with your father in that life? No. Because we wouldn't have become who we are now. And all these people wouldn't have been helped. So bad things can lead to good things? Ethan asked. Sometimes. If you choose to transform them instead of letting them destroy you. 10 years after the abandonment. Sarah stood on a stage at a conference on family homelessness and community renewal, looking out at hundreds of social workers, city planners, and activists. 10 years ago, my husband abandoned me and our 5-year-old twins in a condemned house in Detroit. He meant to make us disappear. Instead, we became visible. We became a catalyst. She told the story, now polished from telling it many times, but still emotionally raw. Today, there are hope houses in 28 cities. They've helped over 3,000 families. But more than that, they've proven something important: abandoned places and abandoned people hold potential. We just need to see it. She showed before and after photos of the Detroit neighborhood. The transformation was stunning. This wasn't me. This was Dorothy Washington, Marcus Johnson, Mrs. Chen, and dozens of others who decided their neighborhood still mattered. I was just the match that lit a fire that was ready to burn. The audience applauded, but Sarah raised a hand. If you take one thing from my story, let it be this: when we're abandoned, when life throws us away, we have a choice. We can let that abandonment define us as victims. Or we can transform it into fuel for change. For rebuilding. For creating something that ensures others don't suffer the same way. My ex-husband tried to erase us. Instead, we became unforgettable. That's not revenge. That's alchemy. That's turning pain into purpose. After the conference, Sarah checked her phone and found a message from David. Now, 10 years later, they had limited, civil communication about the twins. I saw your speech online. You're remarkable. I'm proud of you, even though I have no right to be. What I meant to destroy, you turned into something beautiful. I'm sorry isn't enough. But I'm sorry anyway. And I'm grateful the twins have you as their mother. D. Sarah didn't respond. She didn't need to. She pocketed her phone and walked out into the sunshine, where her 15-year-old twins waited, strong, healthy, well-adjusted teenagers who barely remembered the scared 5-year-olds they'd once been. Ready to go home? Sarah asked. Actually, Emma said, can we make a detour? I want to drive past the Hope House. I haven't seen it in a while. They drove to Detroit. The neighborhood was thriving now. Cafes, shops, renovated homes, families everywhere. The original Hope House had a new plaque that read, "Where abandonment ends and hope begins." Mom, Ethan said, standing in front of the house. Thank you. For what? For not giving up that night. For keeping us safe. For turning the worst thing into something good. Sarah hugged both twins, tears streaming down her face. Thank you for being worth fighting for, she whispered. As they drove home, Sarah thought about the past decade. About the abandoned house that had tried to be their tomb but became their catalyst. About the husband who'd tried to erase them but ended up making them unforgettable. About the community that had saved them and been saved in return. And she realized they hadn't just survived. They'd transformed. And in transforming, they'd shown thousands of others that transformation was possible. That's what they'd done in that abandoned house. They'd planted hope. And hope, once planted, grows wild.